The Maratha agitation demanding reservation in jobs and education is called off after protests turned violent in parts of Mumbai. We look at why a politically and socially dominant caste is seeking quotas. Look who's voting. Mastermind of the Mumbai carnage and UN-designated global terrorist Hafiz Saeed has no problems exercising his franchise in Pakistan. And this is Aedes aegypti 2.0. He's a genetically modified mosquito at the heart of a program to exterminate the species. But why? It's Thursday, July 26th. The Marathas are taking to the streets again. The statewide protest call saw violence in some parts of Maharashtra on Tuesday. The agitation played out in Mumbai, Thane and Navi Mumbai on Wednesday. The community, which by most estimates constitute 33% of the state's population, is demanding reservation in education and jobs. While multiple efforts have been made in the past to accede to that demand, there are primarily two roadblocks. One, Maharashtra already has 52% reservation. As per the Supreme Court, quotas can't exceed 50%. The other, do Marathas qualify as socially and educationally backward? Now, how has the demand for quotas played out legally? Bear in mind that social and educational backwardness is the underlying principle for OBC reservation. The Mandal Commission had categorized Marathas as a forward caste. In 2003, the National Commission for Backward Classes held that politically dominant castes like Marathas cannot be included in OBCs. In 2008, the 22nd report of the Maharashtra State Backward Class Commission rejected the demand for inclusion of Marathas in the list of OBCs. Instead of tabling that report, the then Maharashtra government set up another commission under Justice Saraf. Even before the Justice Saraf report could be submitted, the government set up another committee under Narayan Rane to examine the demand. In 2014, ahead of state elections, the Rane committee gave its report recommending reservation for Marathas in jobs and education. Later that year, the Congress NCP government hurriedly brought an ordinance giving 16% reservation to Marathas. The ordinance was stayed by the Bombay High Court in November 2014. By then, the new BJP-Shiva Sena government was in place, which brought a legislation providing for 16% quotas for Marathas. That too was stayed in 2015 by the Bombay High Court. Now, why have multiple commissions found the demand to include Marathas as OBCs untenable? Because, quite simply, the Marathas have been socially and politically dominant. In his book Politics of Maharashtra, Local Context of the Political Process, Dr. Suhas Palshikar looks at data that underscores the political dominance of Marathas. Consider this: between 1962 and 2004, of the 2,430 legislators, 1,366 belong to the Maratha community. Add to it the fact that district cooperative banks, educational institutions, medical and engineering, universities, sugar factories, milk cooperatives, even land is predominantly owned by the community. It means the Marathas hold the key to the state's rural economy. Since the formation of the state in 1960, 10 of Maharashtra's 18 chief ministers have been Marathas. Why then are members of the community out on the streets? The trigger for the massive mobilization of Marathas over the last year and a half was the rape and murder of a Maratha girl in Kopardi, Ahmednagar in 2016. The accused belonged to the Dalit community. Though there were no delays in making arrests, the matter was in fact heard in a fast-track court, and in less than a year the court sentenced the accused to death. But Kopardi sparked Maratha unrest. Under the banner of Maratha Kranti Morcha, the community first held mook, or silent protests. Their demand was to scrap the Scheduled Caste Scheduled Tribe Atrocity Act. The Marathas claimed the act was misused by the Dalits. In speeches that were made in these protests, very often the community claimed that it could not access government jobs because of reservation benefiting the Dalits. The demand of the community, you would say, is seemingly incongruous with the Marathas' dominant status in society. Well, the Marathas have been largely dependent on agriculture, which has in recent years seen a decline. Incomes have been squeezed. Rural distress has pushed many in the community to look elsewhere for jobs. The community claims government jobs have been cornered by Dalits and OBCs under reservation, and they find themselves left out. When confronted with facts about the community's dominance in the socio-economic sphere, those agitating speak of the haves and have-nots divide among Marathas. The elites form the ruling class, but many in the community, they say, are struggling. A contention that is telling of the failure of the community's powerful political leadership. One of the defining images of this election in Pakistan, United Nations Security Council designated terrorist and mastermind of the 26/11 Mumbai terror strike, Hafiz Saeed, casting his vote in Pakistan. By the way, there is a $10 million US bounty for his capture. No takers in Pakistan, evidently. Saeed-backed candidates are on the ballot this election, an election that has seen the mainstreaming of extremist groups. The Mumbai attack mastermind has campaigned freely throughout the country over the last few months. Bill and Melinda Gates recently donated $4 million to British biotech firm Oxitec towards total mosquito extermination, or essentially genetically modify the species into suicidal mating. It sounds painfully ironic, but it could save thousands of lives. How would this work? So, to start with, a lab genetically modifies male mosquitoes of one species, say Aedes aegypti, and releases them into the wild. Female Aedes aegypti mosquitoes are vectors for parasites that cause Zika, yellow fever, dengue, and chikungunya, but the males are harmless. These genetically modified males mate with normal females and transmit a gene that stops their offspring from developing properly. As a result, all second-generation mosquitoes born of a normal female mosquito and a GM male mosquito die before they can become carriers of disease themselves. According to Oxitec, previous tests in Cayman Islands and even India achieved great success. They claim they managed to reduce numbers by 92% at a site in Brazil in 2016. But there is opposition. First, how would killing off an entire species impact the ecosystem? Mosquitoes are important pollinators, a food source for birds and bats, and fish and frogs who consume their larvae. Second, some mosquito species are really hard to kill off. For example, the Aedes aegypti, native to Africa, entered Latin America through the slave trade, developed defense mechanisms against the pesticide DDT, and are now found in almost all parts of the world. Third, modified males die quickly in the wild. So how many batches would be needed for such large-scale mosquito killing? If 80% mosquitoes are killed, would the remaining 20% be able to sustain an outbreak all by themselves? Could a sister mosquito species take over, transmitting a disease? These are questions that still need answers. And finally, would it be morally wrong to remove an entire species? In case you already suspected this, here is validation from artificial intelligence. Some of the world's most celebrated literary works are filled with gender bias. IBM's India Research Lab looked at works shortlisted between 1969 and 2017 for the Man Booker Prize and found evidence of bias in some 275 of all the books shortlisted. The study found that men were more prominent, more likely to lead the plot, and less likely to be described by their appearance. The bias is also prominent in professions. To quote from Eleanor Caton's 2016 Booker Prize winning The Luminaries, "A woman fallen has no future. A man risen has no past." But surely, literature can be about that. Keep reading between the gender lines. We'll see you tomorrow.